G'day guys, Luke here from Tech Blokes, and as you can see from the title, I'm going to be doing a full comparison of owning an iPhone for the last 10 years, every iteration, and now swapping over to Android for the last 10 months. I want to share my experience. I know there's a lot of people in a similar situation where they're either on an iPhone 6 or an iPhone 6 Plus, and they don't want to make the switch to the new iPhone for numerous reasons. So I'm going to share my experience. We're going to go through everything. This will be extremely in-depth. There is a lot to get through, and I've got pages of notes that I want to run through. And I feel like I had to make this video because there's a lot of people that are in the market for a new phone right now. They've got an old iPhone or an iPhone 6 and they want to make the switch to a new device, but there are certain things that they feel that they need to have in that new device. So let's jump in, guys. Let's get to it. Alright guys, so as I mentioned, I've basically owned every iPhone. I've had the iPhone 3 all the way up to the iPhone 6, and they're beautiful devices. There's no doubt about it. iOS is fantastic. It's led the market for a really long time, and in a lot of ways it is better than what Android offers. However, when the iPhone 10 came out, I watched the keynote and I was really disappointed. I felt like Apple was taking away a lot of the things that made the iPhone such a fantastic device. And for me, I love audio. I love headphones. I own several pairs of really good quality 3.5mm jack headphones. And when they took away the headphone jack and gave us this ridiculous dongle, it felt like the things that you go to iPhone for great quality, for iTunes, it was starting to move away from that. And that was the tipping point for me to start looking for a new device. But there were things that I look for in a new phone, and I feel like talking to other friends, they're in a similar situation. So just looking at my notes here, for me, what I really wanted was I had to have flagship specs. That's obviously important. You're buying a new phone, it needs to last at least a couple of years. It has to be up to speed. It needs to have flagship construction. Apple devices are always up to par. They're very well built. They are generally quite durable. My iPhone 6 here has taken many falls off the table, and it has never died, and every iPhone I've ever owned has been like that. They're built extremely well. It had to have a beautiful display. Now, obviously the iPhones had this LCD display, but in my opinion, they're still quite good. They're very color accurate, and they provided great viewing angles, etc. So that was one of the things I was looking for in a new device. Good audio. So the iPhone 6 via the headphone jack and every other iPhone provided very high quality audio. So when I was looking for a new device, that was one of the key criteria. I had to have something that I could take all of my expensive Sennheiser and all these other branded headphones to a new device, and the Samsung that we're going to talk about in just a moment does obviously deliver that. Now, battery life is a big one. As you guys would know, iPhones generally ship with a smaller battery, but they're very well optimized, and they'll generally last you a full day of use, and that's probably due to the lower res LCD screens. I really wanted wireless charging, to be able to use that in the car, etc. On the desk, it's very handy. And this is more of a pet peeve, but I really wanted a decent USB length cable. The iPhone cables that they come with out of the box, in my opinion, are absolute rubbish. You have to stretch over while you're in bed just to check your phone, and that's a real nuisance. You can get third-party ones, but I really wanted a decent length cable. Another one for me was I wanted expandable storage, but we're never going to get that in iPhones. But that was just something that I was looking for in a new phone. And then camera. So I've got young children, and having a great camera, being able to take photos of them as they grow up was really important to me. And iPhone has always had an excellent camera. So when I started looking for other devices to purchase, that was very much a key criteria for me as well. So as you guys know, you probably already guessed, I've swapped to the Samsung Galaxy S9 and I've been using it now for 10 months, and I wanted to share my experience from going to iPhone for basically 10 years and swapping to Android for the last 10 months. Now, I will say it's been mostly positive. I've really enjoyed the Android experience. I've really enjoyed using it as my daily driver. It checked nearly all of the criteria I just mentioned, but it's not perfect, and there are some things that I actually genuinely do miss from iOS. So I'm going to talk to you about those in depth. So guys, here's what I really love about Android. So guys, I'll let you know that I'm probably more of a nerdier, geeky type user of Android, and that's probably why the switch for me was a good fit. I don't think it's a great fit for everybody. My wife wanted to get a new phone, and I suggested that she stick with iPhone because she loves all of the iPhone apps, and that's one of the first things I want to start to talk to you about. So on the Android devices, one of the things I really love is the built-in file browser. So as you guys know, on iOS, you do have a file browser that Apple rolled out. I think it was iOS 11. So it only really gives you access to your files in iCloud. However, with an Android device, you have a file browser that gives you access to everything in your Google Cloud, your Samsung Cloud, OneDrive, whatever cloud that you own, you can have multiple in there. Plus, you also have a full file browser for everything that you have stored on the device, which is really good because for me personally, I generally don't carry a USB stick, but having my phone with me now means I can just plug it into my computer at work or at home and drag and drop really big files onto my phone, and that is extremely handy. You've got no idea. Like, it's always a lifesaver for me. So to give you an idea, at work, I might be creating a video file and I don't have a 20 gig USB stick with me. So I can plug my phone in, drag and drop it across to my phone just like it was plugged in like a USB stick, and then take that home and plug it in at home. It's so handy, and I really love that functionality. And I will say that the file browser that Samsung has created is extremely good. It's very robust, and it's got a lot of improvements. So for me, that was one of the major pluses that I really loved about the swap to Android. And it just kind of feels like you've got this mini computer in your pocket, and there are a lot of functionality built into Samsung devices, especially that give you that computer-like. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is software. So at the moment, my Android device, my S9, is running Pi 9.0, and when it shipped, it came with Oreo 8.0, which was totally fine. It was great software, but since Samsung has released Android Pi 9.0, the device is really good. Like, it's very smooth. There's a lot of functionality built into it. Like, I love the drop-down menus. I love that you've got Google Play Music. It looks beautiful. It's easy to work with. All of your settings are really easy to get to. I love dark mode that's built into One UI, which we're going to see with Android Q. Just the look and feel is really cool. Now, I've obviously got Nova Launcher and a custom theme built in here, but out of the box, One UI is really, really good. Is it better than iOS? Well, yeah, I think it is. And the reason is there's so much customization built into Android itself. So being able to set the icons where you want them, being able to set grid sizes, being able to keep everything really clean, having the option to swipe left for your Google feed. It's so personalized, and that's what I really love about it. iOS, yeah, it's super fluid. You get super quick updates, but it never really feels like it's yours. It feels like you're just getting what Apple wants you to have. And that, to me, yeah, look, I love iOS and it is great, but I love being able to make this device my own. I love that when I pick it up, if I don't want something in a particular spot, it's super easy for me to set it exactly how I want it. Now, the other thing I really love about Android and Samsung devices in particular is that I have the option to expand the memory. So I've got the 256 gigabyte version of the S9, but it's also got a micro SD card slot. So I went out and purchased a 256 gigabyte SD card for less than $30. It was on special on Amazon. And now I have a 500 gigabyte phone, or 512. For me to go out and buy the same thing with an iPhone, I'd literally have to spend like an extra $300 or $400 to get that extra storage, when really, you know, an SD card is, like I mentioned, $30, $40, $50. And now we've even got SD cards that go up to 1 terabyte. So I feel like Android is really winning that race at the moment. iPhone, you know, we've got bigger storage, we've got up to 512, but the cost is just, it's kind of not worth it in my opinion. Now, the display on the S9 and pretty much all of the current flagship Android devices are on point. Samsung is basically making majority of those devices, so you know, on their flagship devices, you are going to get a fantastic display. What I will say though is I'm currently just running this at 1080p. I kind of don't really feel like the extra res, the QHD or the whatever it is, you know, the 1440p display is really necessary. A 1080p display is super clear. Almost, you really can't tell the difference in the two various resolutions. You really have to like hold the device up super close to your face to even see that. So the battery has been excellent. I can easily get through a full day and sometimes into the next day. Just depends on my usage. If I'm watching a lot of video content or I'm streaming a lot of music, I'll generally finish the day on about 20 to 30%. And I wouldn't call myself a heavy user. I'm not on a lot of social networking throughout the day. For me, it's more music, video, working with files on the device, checking email, and at night I probably just read a Kindle book. And you know, throughout the day I might send 10 to 20 messages. And there's no gaming. I don't do any gaming. But you know, obviously these new devices are very much capable of doing high-end gaming. They've got the specs. It's got 6 gigs of RAM, so it can pretty much handle anything that you're going to throw at it. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about cameras. And this is probably the thing that's going to surprise most people. So I've used the iPhone camera, like I said, for the last 10 years, and then I've swapped over to the S9. Now the S9 has got the dual camera setup, pretty amazing specs. It's got the dual aperture where it can swap depending on lighting conditions. And you know, on paper that sounds fantastic. And look, the image quality that comes out of the S9, it is very nice. In great lighting, you will get really great pictures. So if you're outside, if you're at the park, traveling, whatever it might be, maybe you're backpacking or hiking or something, it's a great device. It will take beautiful, crisp, clear photos that you can share on all of your social networks. However, this is a bit of a gripe. So I use this device, obviously, like I said, to take photos of my children. When you're inside and the lighting isn't that great, so let's say you're in your kitchen and your kid's doing something, they're playing with Play-Doh or whatever it might be, and you want to take a nice picture of them. I tend to find that the image quality is lacking on my S9. So although it has the specs there, the 1.4 f-stop, it just lacks, and the images tend to turn out muddy and blurred, and although it takes a quick photo, it's just not as good as what I would even get on my iPhone 6. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that will disagree with me here and say that I should, you know, check the camera settings, but for the majority of people, we just want to pull the phone out of our pocket and take a quick snap and be like, yeah, that's a great photo. And I think if you had the Google Pixel device, you would definitely get a better inside shot because they've got HDR and algorithms that are going to take fantastic low light photos. They're definitely leading the pack when it comes to low light photos. So maybe look at the Pixel 3a that's just been released or the Pixel 3a XL. Personally, when I would use my iPhone inside, I was actually really happy with the quality of the images. I do find the S9 over sharpens just a little bit. It's not as aggressive as like the S7. It takes beautiful photos. There's no doubt about it. And I often have people comment on how crispy they are. But when you zoom in, I find like they're aggressively sharpened. So I've got a Pixel device coming. I'm going to test that for the next couple of months and compare it to the S9 and give you some more feedback about the camera quality versus the Pixel. So like I said, that's just my personal experience. Some people will probably have a completely different experience. I wouldn't base your opinion on swapping to Android on just the camera experience, because you're buying the whole package. Yeah, the camera it's good. Probably the S10 is better. It's got a much broader range of camera lenses on the back. I think if you're in the market to buy a new Android device just for the camera, nothing else, just the camera, look at the Pixel devices or the P30 Pro that's just been released recently. So I want to talk a little bit about pricing, guys. So as you guys know, I'm in Australia, and currently the iPhone 10 and 10s are on majority of the carriers here. And the pricing starts just for the base model 10 and 10s at about $100 a month. Now I picked up the S9 Plus 256 gig model through Optus, and that's one of the main carriers here, for $79 a month. So when you compare that to what you were getting with the iPhone 10, I think that is a very, very good deal to get the latest spec S9 device. And remember, this is 10 months ago, with the option to expand the storage and to pick it up for only $79 a month with, I think, 25 or 30 gig worth of data. That's a really great deal. Whereas with iPhone, you're spending $100 minimum, you don't get any expandable storage, and you're basically paying for the Apple name. Like if I jump on and look at the pricing right now of a 512 iPhone 10s, I think from memory it starts at about $121 a month, and that's obviously really expensive. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit more about accessories, because when we buy phones, one of the first things we go and look at is, iPhone cases, it's plugging in new headphones, it's like extra battery packs, it's screen protectors, it's extra cables for our cars, etc. So let's talk about it. So with iPhone, the stock standard cable you get from Apple, I think it's average, to be honest, because I literally have not got an iPhone cable left in my house that isn't frayed on the end or falling apart. And to go and buy a new Apple branded cable, you're looking at about $25 to $30. Now I can buy a USB Type-C cable, which is what we get in the S9 Plus. Now I can go and buy a USB Type-C cable from JB Hi-Fi, from Officeworks, or from any of the electronics stores, and I can pick one up for less than $10. Actually, I got one for my car the other day. It cost me $8, and the quality is fine. It does fast charging. It does everything I need it to do. But, we can get cables like one of these Belkin ones here, and like this is a really high quality braided cable. It's got these fantastic ends on it. Oh, sorry, this is a Signet one. And I got one of those, for a 2-meter cable for under $25, and I know that cable is going to last me at least a couple of years. The strength in the end of the cable where we plug in our phone is going to way outlast any iPhone cable. So buying accessories, in my opinion, is way better on Android devices. And the reason is, it's because Apple has a monopoly on accessories. They want, accessory makers to follow their strict guidelines, and that's totally fine. I totally get that. They want to make sure that people aren't buying crappy cables that are going to blow up their devices. Whereas you have a little bit more freedom with USB Type-C because it's more of a universal accessory cable. I just wanted to say that, I've brought a 2-meter cable that I keep in my car. I've brought a 2-meter cable that I keep beside my bed, and it's so handy to get into bed, grab that cable, plug it in, and know that I can roll over and read a book without that cable ripping out of the wall. And I know that's a little thing, but for me, it's actually super handy knowing that I'm never going to rip that out of the wall. I'm never going to wreck the USB Type-C connection at the bottom of my phone. And I can get a really high quality cable, like I said, for about $25 to $30 odd. Now, one of the other things I want to talk about is cloud storage. So for a lot of us, when we buy a device, we do use cloud storage to back up our photos, our contacts, and our messages. Now, obviously, we've got iCloud with iPhone, and that's built for the Apple ecosystem. And if you are just using just Apple, that's great. It's going to work fine. The pricing's okay, but I've found that the backup service that you get from the Android experience from Google is much better. And the reason I say that is, we get our Google Photos, right? Basically, we get unlimited storage for all of our photos. They're backed up. I love that when I plug in my USB Type-C cable at night, all of my photos from the day and my videos are backed up to the cloud, and that I can go on my computer here and then go photos.google.com and all of my photos are there. It's so easy to get to, very easy to share. I can download them, and I just have that peace of mind. They're always there. I'm never going to lose precious moments from my kids growing up or from when we go out on holidays, because it's such an easy service to use. And I think that's actually a good point. Google as a whole makes their services very intuitive, very easy to use. You don't have to be on just an Apple branded product to take full advantage of that. I swap throughout the day between a MacBook and a Windows 10 PC, and being able to use things like Google Drive so easily, that's a real win for me. Actually really love the Google ecosystem. Actually plays a big part in swapping. I was already using everything Google throughout my working day. It made the transition really easy. When I set up my new phone, I grabbed my iPhone, I ran a cable from my iPhone to here, which Samsung actually provided in the box. Yay, Samsung. And it was a really smooth transition. Everything copied across. It took I had a lot of photos on here. It probably took about 45 minutes, but all of my contacts came across, all of my text messages came across, all of my music came across. And I was just really happy with how quick and easy that process was. My brother-in-law did the same thing. He swapped from an iPhone to an Android device, and he is not a tech-savvy person, and he too said it was very simple and very easy for him to make that switch. So that might give you a bit of a peace of mind if you're considering the switch as well. Now, obviously, guys, this is just my opinion, and I have very much enjoyed swapping to Android. There's one thing that I truly miss about iOS, and for me, that is iMessage. Now, iMessage obviously is a fantastic messaging service. It's quick, it's easy to use, and for me, it always felt really fluid. Being able to go into your messages, the keyboard's super quick, and then flicking back and forward between messages was just so good. I always felt like iMessage was the one thing that truly made iOS special, and unfortunately, it's definitely lacking in Android at the moment. They've had a couple of really good stabs at trying to build a great messaging service, and don't get me wrong, I do really like the Messages app from Google. It is really good, but it just doesn't feel like I'm as connected with the people around me. And what I mean by that is just little things like having 3 dots when somebody's replying to, being able to share really high quality photos and videos. Sharing videos on Android here in Australia is a bit of a mess at the moment. They come through in low quality. That will probably change when we get RSC here. But I don't know. Right now, I think the only thing that would ever convince me to go back to an Apple device would be iMessage. I genuinely do miss it. Being able to communicate with the blue bubble, not the green bubble. It kind of it feels like you're part of something special, and that's what Apple does really well. They make you feel like you're part of an elite club almost. Apple generally does make you feel like you're really well connected with other people on iOS devices. So I do genuinely miss iMessage. As you can tell, I'm very, very happy with Android as a whole. It kind of feels like you've got more of a computer in your pocket. I feel like a lot of things on iOS are sort of like stonewalled. You can't get to the files on your own device, and that really annoys me. Whereas on Android, there's a lot more flexibility. It's a lot more open. But probably the one thing that's truly not as good is their messaging service. As I said, the camera is great in great lighting, but for low lighting, I still feel like Samsung is lagging a little bit behind. But as I mentioned, go for a Google Pixel device if that's something that you know you're going to be doing. So, look, guys, that's my experience. I genuinely have thoroughly enjoyed moving to Android after using iPhone for 10 years. Probably the only thing that would ever really convince me to go back to an Apple device is if I had withdrawals from iMessage, and probably if Apple ever come up with an alternative to Face ID. I really don't like Face ID. I love being able to put my hand in my pocket to pull out my device and have it ready to hit the fingerprint scanner, and that as soon as I pull it out of my pocket, it's open. So that's one other little thing that I've really enjoyed about an Android device too. So guys, these are my experiences from using iOS and Android for 10 years and 10 months. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you leave your comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.